Hi, guys.
Hello.
This is very exciting. I can't fully yawn today. Like, I'm having some issues in the studio, but I am here doing a little pod swap. The second one. Welcome back.
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys want to do a little intro? And also, I would love a little life update because we have, well, I guess I already had moved last time we recorded, but still, new places, you know?
Yeah.
Yes, new vibes.
Exciting new life updates.
Well,
for it.
hello. Welcome to the podcast, everyone. I'm Jaci, by the way. This is my voice.
Oh, this is Chelsey.
I'm pointing to her to introduce herself. So we just moved to Orange County from LA, and we are loving it so much. It has been the best little change. Over the pandemic, we had a really great, solid community in LA, but a lot of people started moving. So we actually have some friends in Orange County already. So when we moved, it didn't feel like this, scary thing. We also moved at the same time, which was like by the grace of God. I don't even know how we found places at the same time.
Literally by the grace of
Were
God.
you guys on the same, like, lease cycle kind of thing?
Not really.
No.
Wow.
So I got kicked out of my house on Christmas.
That's right.
My landlord was like, on Christmas Day.
Yeah,
this
you guys
woman-
have had quite the,
What is-
history this year.
On Christmas Day, this woman texts me, our landlord, and says, I'm selling the house. We're going to get people in there to start looking at it in 3 days. I'm in Arizona. I'm like, whoa, what do you mean? I didn't even know she was like wanting to sell the house soon. The market is just hot. She wanted to get
Also,
rid
it's
of it,
like
whatever.
a house.
It's a house. So we're like,
Like, you're very
okay.
established in there. It's not just like a little apartment, like
Yeah.
studio apartment that you can just like pick up and go.
Yeah. So we basically had to move within like 30 days of that, and we couldn't find any place. We were thinking we might buy a house, so we were like looking into that, but the market was crazy. We didn't even know what we wanted. We had such little time, so we're like, okay, let's just put our stuff in storage and like stay at like in an Airbnb for a month until we can. Again, I thought we would like stay in an Airbnb for a month and buy a house within that time. And then it started being like, yeah, I don't think we're buying a house, so we need to find a house to rent. So we stayed in this Airbnb that was probably the most depressed I've ever been in my whole life because it had absolutely no natural light. It was pitch black.
That's the worst. I'm so affected by light.
I'm so affected by light, and the photos on the listing were not what it was. And it was also in an area of LA which I like had never lived in, and it was way overpriced. Anyway, everything about it was just not good. So then we ended up moving into like the 6-month rental, blah blah blah. And Chelsey was in like a year lease so we were on very different, like I was in a 6-month one that ended in August, so mine was actually kind of like perfect timing for when I needed to move, but theirs was a little bit longer, so it just
ours
worked out.
Yeah, we had to end our lease a little bit early, but just a couple months early.
Yeah.
But I don't know. This year was like a freaking whirlwind, I feel like, with where we're going to live, because we were like sticking by LA's side. Like during the pandemic, we were like, our friends were moving out, we're like, no, we love it here still. And then at least for me, like the moment that I found out I was pregnant and then I was sick 2 seconds after that, I was like, yeah, I'm out of here. Like, this is going to be it for me. I need to move somewhere else. And I don't even know necessarily why that is. Maybe it was because that's where I got sick. So I was like trying to get out of that environment. Yeah. But also I think I just was like, I'm entering a new chapter of my life. I want to slow down a little bit. LA is very has amazing food. There's amazing energy here, but
we'll never be like LA haters. There's so many things we love about it, but I think it served its purpose for both of us.
Yeah, it was just time for a change.
I completely feel that.
I love it, but then we did give up on it and we turned our back on it and we moved out.
Maybe you just close the chapter.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But to be honest, I could not get out fast enough. When we finally started looking, I was like, let's go.
You also wanted a bigger apartment. You were in a one bedroom. Like, she's having a kid. It's like, all of it.
That's very fair. It's similar to when you buy a whole new wardrobe, all these new clothes, and suddenly you hate your old ones. Mm-hmm. Like, the second that I know a big change is going to happen, even if I loved what I had before, hate it all. It's over. I'm over it. Done.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want any remembrance of this time of my life.
No. It didn't happen. I'm blocking it out of my memory.
Exactly.
So we found places 5 minutes from each other, which is just really crazy.
Yeah.
Like, it's been so convenient, so nice. We love the area. Like I said, we have a group of friends there already. The weather's been amazing. We live closer to the coast. Like, I think it's really just fitting for this chapter of life, and it's been really awesome. So
yeah, we've been loving it so far.
Mm-hmm.
Can you ever imagine like not living near each other?
I don't want to imagine it.
I don't want to imagine a world. It would be hard. I mean, we did long distance. As far as the podcast goes, we did long distance for 2 years of it. Mm-hmm. And I don't think we realized how inconvenient it was until we lived right next to each other. And we lived 20 minutes apart. And we were like, this is amazing. And now that we live 5 minutes, I'm like,
how can we ever go back?
How can we ever go
back?
Next
you'll be roommates.
Yeah.
Exactly.
With the husbands.
Well, seriously. Well, and I think maybe we say like, oh, it's so awesome we live 4 minutes away. But once they found their place, it's kind of like whoever were to find the place first and the other person's like, that's my commute. Like I drive to her house to go do the podcast. So it's like, why would I buy a house or then not buy a house? Why would I try and like rent a place that's like 40 minutes away it's just
gonna have
like
to
work. That's a
commute.
Why would I want a 40-minute commute? So it's like actually not necessarily by accident, but it was really convenient that we found a place we loved that was so close to them as well, that they loved.
Yeah.
Because that's definitely rare. But
yeah, no, that's really, really convenient. I get it. The commute makes sense. I want to talk about comparison and FOMO. I feel like this is actually a topic that anytime like we're talking or I'm with you guys, like this is like the thing that comes up the most. Jaci, you're really good at being like vulnerable and open. The TikTok where I think you were crying in the TikTok. And
I know the one.
The one about like management and then whatever and not feeling like you found your spark again.
Yes.
Something. I'm like putting words in your mouth, but I'm pretty sure that's like kind of what you said.
Yeah.
I love when you post stuff like that because I'm like, oh, I'm like actually that. Yes, like that is very relatable. Like I feel comforted.
Yeah.
What are your best tips for dealing with comparison specifically to people on social media?
Oh my gosh, it's like it really has been just like the greatest struggle of my life. So I feel I have so many thoughts, but I'm never going to pretend like I have it all figured out because I struggle with it still, you know? But I don't know, it's just, you know that cheesy quote that's like, you are, when I don't know it actually, I'm trying to think of how it goes.
Story of my life. I'm like, you know that one quote that's like, yeah, that one?
Yeah.
You're enough.
It's like you are you and that's your power. Like no one else is you. And I don't know. I think we all have such special things about us that make us us and no one else can ever recreate it. When I really think about that, and it's not to be in like a cocky way or anything, just it's that inner confidence when you realize that it's like I do have like special gifts and talents to like offer this world and I don't need to be like I will never be someone else. So really, what's the use of me, you know, of course, easier said than done, but what's the use of me looking at this girl and being like, I wish I had this, or how did she get that deal? And like I was saying in that TikTok, when I was just like going through a hard time personally and then my management dropped me and it was just such a hit to my ego. I was like, oh my gosh, I've always, again, put a lot of my self-worth into my work, being like, I work so hard, like, you know, it doesn't matter if I'm not the most talented, I'll outwork people, like kind of having this as like part of my ego. And when they were like, yeah, like we're dropping you, like your numbers aren't, you know, what we'd want, I'm like, oh, bye self-confidence. Like that was where I found like, you know, so much of my worth. And so over the past like 6 months, I feel like I've just been really like regaining my sense of creativity and understanding that situation where I got dropped and I got rejected, quote unquote, was one of the best things that could have happened in that time period. Even at the time, I was so hurt and annoyed. I realized that it was good for me. And like, I don't know. I think that's so hard to see until it happens to you, you know, hindsight's 20/20, but I just have realized that like that was necessary. Like I needed that to happen so that I could really just get real with myself. And also I've started to, and I think managements are great, and it's like maybe I'll have a manager in the future. I don't right now, but my assistant is like kind of become my manager at this point, and it's been so great. And I've realized that I don't need that. And I thought for so long that I did. And so it's been a good thing for me. And I think that's been like really eye-opening.
It's like the King Tyler Cameron always says, rejection is redirection.
It's true.
King Tyler Cameron.
TC?
Yes, I'm familiar. There was almost like an analogy a friend shared a few years ago that I always think about. Actually, it's a friend who was like obsessed with you back in the day, and that's how I found out who you were.
Oh,
like,
that's so funny.
Years ago. But she was saying, you know, when you're in traffic and they at least say that, like, if you're trying to go in a bunch of different lanes, you're actually better off just staying in one lane. You'll get there faster than if you go into a ton of different lanes. So the idea was if you're just focusing on your lane, not that you can't like think outside the box or anything, but it's more so you're focused on what you're doing. You're going to get there faster than if you were sliding into everyone else's lane and, you know, comparing yourself or trying to be someone else instead of just being yourself and focusing on where you're at. You're going to get there faster, or it's going to be more efficient, or like there's going to be less like accidents or whatever it would be. And whenever I start to get like, oh, I don't know, like this is like kind of sucks, or I wish I had what they had, or like this isn't enough or whatever, I always think about that and I'm like, oh, I feel better.
Yeah,
definitely. You know? And there's going to be less suffering and negativity if you're not constantly going into other lanes. I think that's like so powerful.
100%. So I did swim team growing up. I promise this relates. I'm like, anyways, you want to know what sports I did?
Like, back to me.
No. Like, anyways, are you guys done? No, I did swim team growing up, and then I was like a swim coach, and so when I would do swim team, right, like I'm assuming everyone's seen a swim race because you watch the Olympics or swim meet or whatever. You're in your own lane, and it's just you, and you have like the lane lines or whatever. And our coaches would always tell us, so I would do breaststroke, which is like the frog looking one. Yeah. And so your head comes up out of the water every time you do a stroke. And they would be like, do not look in the other lanes. Like, no matter what you do, like, do not turn your head to go look to where the other swimmers are at. Because when you're in the race, it's like, your natural curiosity is like, where am I? Yeah. Like, am I dead last? Am I going to embarrass myself? Am I first? Like, should I go faster? And they would always, that was like the number one thing they would always say. But as a kid, you know, you're like, I'm going to look in the other lanes. Yeah. And so I would look in the other lanes and whatever.
Like, and I came first.
Yeah, I'm like, and I still was smoking everybody.
Because they were actually all behind me, by the way. But anyways, back to the story.
I couldn't even see them because they were so far behind. No, and so I would, you know, I don't remember the actual, you know, outcome of that. But then when I was a coach and I would tell my kids that, like, don't look to the side, I would see the kids who would look to the side, and by doing that you slow yourself down, because either you're getting stressed because you see someone really close to you, so now all of a sudden you're kind of like trying to keep tabs on them, and it naturally, the way that your body is, it slows you down. And I always thought that was such a cool analogy, kind of like you were saying, is like, as soon as you look into what other people are doing, it slows you down. It makes you question yourself. When you just keep your head down and you're just going for what, you know, you're doing your best, and you know that you can't do any more than that. So, like, what does it even matter where the other kids are? Because it's not like all of a sudden you can swim so much faster. You swim how you swim. And I always think about that, because whenever you do look at, like, other people in any life stages, or if you guys are doing the same thing and it's like, oh my gosh, there's so much, you know, ahead of me, you're wasting so much of your actual energy that's making you slow down. So it's only hindering you. It's not hindering them. They don't care. They don't see that you're looking at them, but it's just making it worse for you.
That's a way better picture than mine.
No, I loved both.
Yeah, I'm like, I had to tweak it a little bit.
Yeah, I saw where you were going, but mine was better. No, that's really good. I think when you were talking about that, it made me think of the pressure we put at ourselves at different ages, of like, girls naturally want to be married by 30, like that's like the, for some reason, a ticking time bomb of like marriage. And even more than like, I think society, I think like me personally, there's certain things that like, oh, at this age I will be here, at this age I will be here, and I will put this pressure on myself based off of, maybe it is based off what other people are doing, but also like what I thought my life would look like. And that in itself, I think, is really difficult. I talk about like navigating your 20s all the time, because I'm like, what the hell am I doing, like, every single day? But I've been trying to get better about kind of letting go and being open to like like where life takes me, like, cheesy as it is. I just am trying to not put as much pressure on myself age-wise, almost, of like, at this certain age I want to be here, and like I want to be married at 27, I want to be whatever. And it's like, okay, I'm also like not even replying to any single boy, so like you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, just trying to work on, I don't know, I guess navigating your 20s. But what do you do to maybe, like, I think everyone's life in general, like, it doesn't really pan out exactly how you think it's going to. What do you do when you're trying to like not put as much pressure on yourself? I know, like, we're, at least, like, I feel like all of us are like overachievers and like kind of like, this is what I want. Do you guys have tips for like kind of letting go and not being as like married to your first idea?
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say, have you read the book The 4 Agreements?
Years ago, and I need to reread it. I read it when I was in like high school.
It's such a fast read. It's like, you can read it you know, really quick, and especially because you're probably a really good reader because you read all the time. So after I read that book and like actually digested it, was when I feel like that changed for me, when I really started to actually let go of expectations for my life, because I was very much like that. And I always told myself that was like embedded in my DNA, that I was just like, a perfectionist and I had to have the best of the best. Otherwise, like, what was I living for, basically? And after I read that book, he talks about one of the, well, obviously there's 4 agreements, but one of them is letting go of expectations. And basically, like, when he was talking about how expectations in life lead to disappointment, and that's the main cause, actually basically the only cause of disappointment, is because you're comparing it to an expectation that you had for yourself, for other people. First of all, other people are always going to let you down because you have an expectation that you made up that has nothing to do with them. And I realized I had so many expectations that were like so deeply embedded in so many different beliefs and like narratives that I had about what life should look like. And then another one of the agreements that kind of goes along with it is like, just always do your best. And if you always do your best, like you can't ask you can't ask anything else of yourself, because there's literally nothing possibly you could do besides do your best. And so like putting those two together, I feel like changed my life, because it was like, okay, if I let go of expectations of what I think my life should look like, first of all, I won't be as disappointed, because I won't be like getting my hopes up about certain things that when I really look at it, I'm like, why does it even matter if I like start having kids at this point, or if I get married at this point, or if I buy a house at this age? Like, why, when I really ask myself, like, why do I want that? It makes no sense. Like, my answer, I can't really give myself a really good answer if I'm being honest with myself. And so then I just remember, okay, if you're just doing your best, then life all of a sudden becomes very enjoyable, and it's not anymore like, I don't know, this race to prove to yourself that you're worthy of something. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I also feel like life isn't meant to be perfect, and that's something I always have to remind myself of. It's like whenever something doesn't go according to plan, I feel like all of us are just, what the heck, that wasn't part of my plan, that's not what I wanted. When we really shouldn't be that surprised, because that's just how life goes. And when I really think about the fact that like I was saying, with my management dropping me, everything that I've gone through that in the moment has really bothered me and made me upset, it just passes, the time passes, and I kind of get over it, and I move on to a new phase of life. And I know that there's gonna be hard, parts of every single part of life, but when you can kind of almost just be, I don't want to say be okay with bad things happening, but be okay with things not going according to plan, when you can really just be like, that's life, that's literally just how life goes, that's not a bad thing. Like the fact that I'm, again, like not pregnant yet, it's like, that's just the way my life's going. Like, what am I going to do? I mean, of course, is there like moments where it's disappointing because you have certain expectations, of course, but it's almost just crazy that we expect life to just be what we want it to be. You know what I mean?
And I think like what you were talking about, it almost diffuses the situation to where it's, the emotions aren't as like at like a heightened. Yeah. The thing that you said, Chelsey, about expectations of other people, I want to talk about that, because I mean, we all have expectations, yeah. But we all have expectations, whether we, consciously are thinking of them or not. And that's been something that I have tried to, in the past year, I'm like, okay, but I'm upset about this, but I didn't communicate this, and I don't really actually think this expectation is fair. And when someone else has an expectation of me that's completely unrealistic, I feel so like suffocated and just like, I'm like, okay, I'm drowning, like, please leave me alone. How have you kind of like shifted expectations? Because I'm assuming like you do that, people do this in like friendship and marriage and relationships.
Well, I was gonna say, I think when I read the 4 agreements, I had just gotten married, and so I was like definitely adjusting to this new lifestyle of living with a man and like having, again, expectations of what marriage looked like versus what it actually ended up being. And as I was reading, I was like, okay, I do have many expectations for this guy that I've literally never expressed to him, and I just expect people to know. Or, I have this, we all have an idea of what we want our lives to look like, very specifically in the back of our minds, that we've never expressed to people. And like subconsciously, it's usually subconscious, so it's not even like we're consciously, making Pinterest boards about it. It's like just in the back of our mind of what things look like. And so when I was reading this and I was like newly married, I can't remember like specifically what he says in the book, but basically like clear content communication. So like communicating expectations that you have, because it is okay to have certain expectations that you guys both agree on.
It's okay, but a lot to have of the times, standards where it's like, we don't want him to gaslight me. Okay,
exactly.
That's
like, let's have him not be toxic.
Right.
Let's have him be a nice guy,
respectful.
Yeah, the bare minimum. But you know, expectations of like, oh, he should be, you know, saying this to me like when I'm sad. It's like, huh? Like, how would he even know that? You know. And so I had to take a hard look at myself and the expectations that I had for him. Like, what am I expecting him to do that's making me sad? For literally like, I'm just creating this false reality in my head, and I'm living in this false reality that's making me sad. Like, I'm making myself sad is kind of what I realized. And then if you're actually clear with your communication and you're like, hey, just so you know, it makes me feel really good when you say this to me. Like, that makes me feel really loved. It's like such an easy thing to say and do. And it doesn't, I think people think it'll like ruin the magic of it, but it really doesn't. Like, if anything, it just makes you feel a little bit more empowered in your relationship and your communication. And it literally fixes the problem. Like, and then if you know, you can't expect them, again, to be perfect at it, but you've done your best to communicate instead of just like having these, you know, rules for other people that they don't even know, that they're trying to live by, but they don't even know what the rules are.
In a way, you're kind of setting them up for failure without the communication.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah. And we do it for a lot of, like, I've been thinking about this recently because I've been seeing a lot of videos on TikTok and stuff of people getting really upset about what other people say to them in certain situations. You know, it's like, if you're going through something in life, I mean, I see this a lot with pregnancy too. Like, people be like, don't say this to a pregnant person. Don't say this to a person with a newborn. Like, don't say this to someone with a kid. And it's like so much that you have to know not to say and like how to say things perfectly. And I think it just like people let it rule their lives of like how other people are talking to them because they have expectations of, you should know exactly what's going to make me feel good and what I'm going through. And it's like, people are just trying their best.
Yeah.
People are just trying to, like, they don't know, like, you know.
And it only harms you to have that expectation to be like, if anyone says A, B, and C to me, I'm going to be livid.
Yeah, it's like they should know better. It's like,
they don't. Okay. So
you don't even really know them.
Yeah, they don't.
Yeah.
So get over it.
And it's okay if they don't. You know, it's like, if anything, just be like, oh, you know, that kind of makes me sad when you say that because this and this. And they're like, oh, promise you they're not gonna be like, I know, that's why I said it. Because like they're gonna be like, I had no clue.
I know, that's why I said it.
Yeah. I wanted to make you feel like crap. Yeah. Sorry.
I think even just being on the internet in general, like I don't know, I feel like I'm kind of like walking on eggshells, literally to the point of like, if I say I like apples, like that offends someone who likes oranges, you know?
Oh, I can't.
It stresses me out to no end. And I don't know, I feel like I've also, and I've recently brought it back, but like I definitely have made myself like smaller or like watched, and not even just in like the past like 2 years really, but like even before, I'm like, even with my humor, I think I'm very like I have like this Valley Girl accent. I don't know where it came from. I like my humor, like I don't know.
Probably the Valley.
No, it was before I lived there. Okay, like I really have no answers.
That's what I was saying. People are like, "Do you guys talk like Valley Girls?" I'm like, oh, "We live in the Valley."
Yeah. Like, what did you expect from me? I should
like. Would you say that to someone who lives in England? Like, you have an English accent. It's like, yeah, I live here. So
that's actually good. I should have used that, but just making myself kind of smaller. I don't know, it was something off of what you're saying.
Yeah.
You know, I'm forgetting. But on the internet, I think it's
the internet has gotten to the most annoying place. I'm here to say it.
Thank you.
I don't care. Like, we have to walk on eggshells about everything we say. It's like you said, you could say something that's not even like
with the best of intentions,
not controversial in this.
And then we'll get a podcast review about how I'm so mean because I said this, and I'm like, that wasn't my intention. But you just have to, like, it's almost like the past few years the internet has gotten so toxic that, you know, I'm not going to pretend like it doesn't affect me because certain comments really bother me, and like that's why I was saying I shouldn't read DMs as much or whatever. But at the same time, it's almost unfortunately like hardened me to where I'm like, okay, get over it. Like,
yeah. Now I don't
sorry.
care.
Now I don't care. I used to be so people pleasy, you know, tiptoeing around things, being very just like, I didn't want to offend anyone. And I'm like, well, you're offended no matter what. So I'm just going to say what I want to say. And unfortunately for you, if that offends you, it's really just not my problem. If I said something that was extremely problematic and, you know, I feel remorse for that, I would of course apologize. But it's like, I'm not going to apologize for my, you know, opinion on like the underwear I like or something.
Also, it's like your first opinion. It's like, it's not even, like I said, after solidified. You know, and then you're purposely doing it. It's like a lot of the times you're just saying something with the best of intentions that maybe you've heard before, and so you think that's the right answer.
It is insane. I feel like I had the opposite effect. Like, before, I didn't care. I was like, oh, you think that? You hate me? You say all this? I don't care. Like, it never bothered me. And then in the past year or two, I think I've become just like I'm like hyper aware of how things come across and whatever, to the point where I'm like, I have lost my personality. Like, there are so many things, like, I'm like, I don't know. It's just, it is... Yeah,
especially if you have a sense of humor that's like a little more sarcastic, or could be edgy, or people could take the wrong way. It's just like, let's talk about this. Chelsey and I have said awesome as like a sarcastic remark. You know, when something goes wrong, we're like, awesome. We've said that since high school. It was on our merch because it's like just a signature thing that we say all the time on our podcast. And we jokingly on a podcast said that we invented the word awesome. We're like, oh yeah, as you guys know, like we invented the word. And someone literally sent us an origin of how that the word awesome has been around since the 1800s, how this is actually where it came from. We
were shocked to find out we did not actually invent the word awesome.
I am shocked.
Yeah.
This whole time.
Yeah. This whole time.
I know.
And of course it's funny, but I'm like, I'm scared.
No,
I'm scared of the world we live in.
Literally.
Yeah. That you're sending me this and you're genuinely like trying to educate me on how I did not create the word awesome when I'm 25. I'm like, you know, we've gotten to a place, and that's what I'm saying, where you have these experiences and it just hardens you, because you're just like, okay, I just can't care about this anymore, and I can't try and prove to other people that I'm a good person with good intentions. My people will understand that.
Yeah. Well, and it's like you said, if you try and like make yourself smaller and you start losing your personality, you also stop being in touch with your own intuition. Yes. Therefore, you don't even actually know what's right and wrong anymore. Like, if you actually are just listening to yourself, we all have like a moral compass inside of us. Mm-hmm. We usually know what's right or wrong. Sure, we could learn a lot as well from other people, but at the same time, if you're just listening to what everybody else is saying is right and wrong, you start to lose your own compass, because you're like, I don't know, I thought that was right, but maybe that's completely wrong and I'm an evil person. Or maybe like you said, like, oh, I don't know, just like little things that I didn't know. I just all of a sudden I'm like, okay, am I the stupidest person alive? I know nothing. Or
and you lose the people who are super invested and love you anyway, because it's like they love you for you. That's why they follow you. That's why they listen to your podcast. Mm-hmm. That's what I have to remind myself a lot. When I see these negative comments or reviews, I have to remind myself, first of all, that it really is like 5% of people.
If that.
Yeah. But probably 2% of people, and that's just how life is. But also, it's like you want to just be your true self for the people who love you for you, because it's an awesome community. That's the point of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, sorry that not everyone is funny and they don't understand that awesome, obviously that was a joke.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But that's just not your problem.
Yeah, it's honestly like, okay, then don't listen to our podcast, because you probably think we're the rudest people on the planet. If you don't understand sarcasm.
Yeah. That's my thing, my humor. I'm like, you would think I am like so probably like stuck up and honestly like stupid, or just I'm very sarcastic, very whatever.
Yeah, you should read our reviews.
Really? No, podcast reviews are literally,
Chelsey, they're so, it's like 99% great.
I may be stuck on one specific review.
Listen, podcast reviews are actually what I imagine hell to be. I truly believe that. If you're listening, please go leave a nice review.
Also, they're kind of anonymous too, which is unfortunate. Like on Instagram, they're
you can't their profile.
Exactly. It'll be like Ladybug 351 or something like that. And so you're like, you're hiding behind
Ladybug 351. She's not that nice.
Yeah.
Ladybug is not that nice.
No. And you never
don't be fooled.
Yeah, you don't know who it is.
Yeah.
Never.
Yeah, it's a dark place. But again, there are so many people who are so nice and go out of their way. That's what I've been trying to focus on too. Like, even with reviews, I'm like, wow, that's so nice of people to go completely out of their way. They do not have to do that.
No.
And leave a nice review. That's really actually very meaningful. And so that's what I've been trying to focus on. But it's easy to get stuck on the mean people, for sure.
Yes. And those nice people have a very special place in my heart, because that is so kind of them. You know?
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk again about 20s, my favorite topic, because I'm like, what the hell's going on? What has been a time in your, like, in recent years where you have felt very lost or confused, and then how did you kind of, like, come back to yourself?
That's a great question.
That is a really good question.
And actually, we talked about this a while ago, me and Jaci, because my sister just turned 24, and we were talking about the age of like 23 and 24. And I was saying, when I turned 23, I remember having the worst birthday blues because I was just like,
I did when I turned 23.
How old am like I'm 23
I think it's a
now.
universal experience. That's what we've established is that everyone's 23rd year was like
the worst,
kind of horrible.
I talked about this so much on the podcast, and then I turned 24 and I was like, oh, suddenly I'm better. Like, but I'm like, there's something about your 23rd year that was just not it.
No, because the excitement of your 20s is kind of starting to die a little bit. Like you're no longer just 20 or 21 and it's like, oh, now I'm an adult, like I'm no longer a teenager. And you're also expected to know everything about like what you're doing with your life, your path, your passions, but you're so young still. Like when I look back, I thought I was so old when I was 23. Like the day I turned 23, I'm like, my life is literally over. And now I look back, I'm like, you were a baby. Like you were such a little baby. Well, not like that. I'm like, you're such a crybaby. Literally both, honestly. But I know it's just a recipe for disaster. And I felt like I didn't know like what I wanted to do. I had passions. I had things like interests, and I had things that I knew I wanted to do. I just hadn't really started them yet. I didn't really know. Also, I had just gotten married like a couple years before that. So the newlywed like phase of like, oh, marriage is the next thing. Then it was like, well, now what? Like now what's the next thing? I don't know. Is my life just like constantly next things now? Like, you know, you just kind of go into a world of self-reflection that's maybe not so fun. But yeah, I feel like as soon as you get older and you start to like come out of that, because you start to realize a lot of things about life. And I love to quote Kylie Jenner, and you just start realizing things.
Yeah, a poet.
Yeah. Like you start to realize what's important in life. You start to understand that the lows in your life can actually be lessons, and they're not so dramatic, and they're not so the end of the world. And you start to learn how to, I don't know, learn who you are.
I feel like I was lost for a lot of my, like I still feel like I'm just now kind of figuring out, like of course I don't know everything there is to know about life, but I feel a lot more content and comfortable with who I am, and I feel a lot more free than I've ever felt. I feel like my early 20s were me trying to figure out like, what do I really believe in, and what, like, I don't know, how do I feel about myself, and like what am I basing my self-worth off of? And you know, we got married so young, and I always tell my friend, she is 27 and I'm like, she's single, and we always talk about how like we got married when we were 21, and I always say I wouldn't recommend it, even though I do not regret it at all. I love Leif. I think literally he's my person, and I'm so glad that we've like grown together. But when I think about how young I was, again, everyone's journey is unique, so I'm not hating on you if you want to get married young. I think it could be great. But at the same time, I'm like, oh my gosh, when we hit our 5-year anniversary, I was like, now is when I would have loved to marry you. Because now I actually know you so well. We know each other so much. We know ourselves so much better. And so I was telling my friend who's single, I'm like, it's kind of awesome that you are 27 and you like haven't met quote unquote the one yet, but you are so confident and secure and comfortable with yourself now, and you weren't when you were 21, 22, 23, 24, you know, and now you feel so much more confident. What an amazing time for you to find your person and, you know, connect with them. And so I feel like your 20s are just you finding yourself, and I think a lot of things come up. I know it has for me, of like my childhood or just things that I've gone through, and trying to work through all of that in my early 20s. And I literally feel like right now I'm 26, about to be 27. I feel like right now I'm kind of starting to be like free.
Yeah.
I haven't felt that
encouraging.
Way. Yeah.
I feel like I teeter between I know exactly who I am and I have absolutely no idea who I am. And like I don't know how to really make that make sense, but I feel one or the other.
I completely relate. Yeah. I think that's super relatable, actually. I felt the same way for a long time. I still kind of feel that way a little bit. Yeah. Where some days I'm like, okay, we slipping back into some old habits here that I thought I was over. Like, and then, the next day I'm like, I am so content and confident. Like, I know who I am deeply. But, yeah, I think that's what your 20s are for, and don't beat yourself up for feeling that way. It's so normal.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing for me as I've gotten into my later 20s, I guess, we're on the downhill slope now, technically.
Crazy.
Is like shedding the narratives that I had about myself, of what I thought that I was, I guess, and like what my, again, like I said, that was like embedded into my personality, you know, these traits that I had that I didn't love or that I loved, and realizing that I can kind of be whoever the heck I want to be, and like I can change at any time. I can change my opinions, I can change, you know, my personality, and I can change my habits. Not like I can, you know, change my personality in terms of like being fake. But if I don't like something about, you know, a habit that I've had to use as like a coping mechanism since I've been little or something like that, I can unlearn that and I can change. And that has been the most freeing thing ever, is like not feeling trapped by all of these narratives that I had made about myself that were making me miserable. Like, again, these expectations that I'd had on myself of what my life should look like, what I should be like, what I should like, what my days, you know, what my routine should look like. And now I feel like, yeah, I've kind of in the same boat where I'm like, life is just fun. It's like I'm playing Sims, but with myself. Like
I'm gonna do
what
whatever
do
the heck
I want my
want.
day to look like? What do I want to do? Like, what do I want my life to look like? And what feels good? What feels fun? And I'm allowed to change my mind. And that's actually really freeing to know that.
I think that's the most important thing. And we, again, like live in a society where it's you can't change your mind apparently.
Yeah.
And I think that is single-handedly like the most important thing, something I remind myself of all the time. Like, I also change my mind all the time.
Yeah.
I am very like, I go through phases with things. That's just kind of how I like operate. And I just think it's very freeing exactly to know that I can change my mind and I can try something and see if I like it. I can do, there's just, I mean, fill in the blank. There's so many different things. And if you don't like it, or if you decide that's not what you like, that's not for you or whatever, you are allowed to change your mind.
Yeah.
Totally.
It's very important.
And even as something as simple as this, I was just telling Chelsey last night, I was like, I don't think I like working out in the morning. That's, you know, in my mind, being a very like motivated, driven person who wants to live this healthy life. I'm like, I feel like I need to wake up at 5:30 a.m. and get going. That's what I feel like the expectation of myself is deep down, when really I don't ever do that. Like, I don't wake up at 5:30 a.m. but I feel like I should, and I should be going to a workout class. I should have everything done by 8:30 a.m. and then I can get my day started by 9 and work. And I was just saying last night, I was like, I think I want to start working out at night. Like, I've realized that I went to a workout class at 5 and I loved the way I felt. I went and took a dip in the ocean, came home, showered, like got ready for bed or had dinner, and I felt it was so nice. And I'm also not married to that now. I'm not like, okay, now that's my new personality, is like working out at night. But I'm like, it's so weird that I feel like that's not even okay for me to do. It's like, oh, you know, healthy entrepreneur people wake up at early and they go straight to their workout. And I'm like, but I don't want to do that. So maybe next month I will. Who knows? And that's okay. But it's like, for now, I want to start working out at night, and who cares? You know?
Exactly. But it's weird. I think it's like the added pressure of having a following on social media, because I feel this way all the time, but I don't think that my friends who like don't have like a platform or something like feel that always. Yeah, like they're just like, oh, whatever. But for some reason, to me, one, I make everything I like a personality trait, so that is on me. Two, I do feel like I'm tied to something I did 3 months ago, and if I'm not doing that anymore, then
they're
it's
like
wrong.
Following up. Why aren't you still doing this? You're like, oh shiz, I forgot about that.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like this weird thing. But also another thing I say all the time, like, routines are really personal, and they also change a lot. And I think they should be changing. And I think, you know, from anything from routines to how you act, your beliefs about certain things, I think that should actually always be changing, because that's actually a sign of growth. But for some reason in our heads, especially when you, like, I'm the same way, like, healthy, entrepreneur, productive, want to do all this stuff. But, like, if I am the exact same way I was 6 months ago, then I'm not growing. So, like, that actually in itself, not that your routines always have to change or anything like that, but, like, I want to constantly be like changing and learning and evolving. And like, for some reason, even though like I know that that's actually a good thing for the most part, it's in my head like ingrained as like, nope, bad, but it's not.
Exactly. You feel like anything, you change. I think that's true. The added pressure of having a platform of people being like, you know, just giving their opinions, which is fine. They're entitled to them. But it's like, oh, it's actually better for you to work out in the morning. Scientifically, and I'm just like, well,
whatever.
You know, at this, but it does add a layer to it where, you know, if other people aren't involved in your life at all, it's like your decisions don't really make a difference to them.
Yeah.
So I agree. That's a good point.
And it's so weird because like our routines that we base things off of, like a 9 to 5, for example, like I just saw somebody post a meme from Twitter or something like that. And it was like Henry Ford in 1926, I don't know, created the 9 to 5, 8 like workday. Or 8-hour workday, you know, 5 days a week. And the meme was like, so it was you that started this. And I'm like, isn't that weird though? That like we base our entire routine off of like
something one person made up.
Yeah. And he's just like, hey, this works for my company. Like I'm going to create this. And now like our entire society functions off of that. And so when you remember that, it's like, oh, I'm again I can actually ask myself some clarifying questions and be like, why do I feel like I have to do this in order to appear this way? Or why do I feel like I have to, like you said, like be working by 9 and otherwise I'm like a trash of a human? It's like, literally, how does that even actually make sense when you really think about it?
Especially when you do have a job like all of us where we do kind of make our own schedules. It's like we can kind of do whatever, we can kind of make our own schedule be what works for us, but you still have that little pressure in the back of your mind, like it has to be this super productive thing where I wake up super early. Anyway, I'm also just not a morning person, like never have been. Maybe that's an identity I'm protecting, okay, but
I'm like, you need to shed that narrative.
But it's like, I don't know, I haven't enjoyed it, so I'm like, why am I like forcing myself to be like this, health queen who wakes up at 5 a.m. when that's hasn't even been enjoyable to me.
It's like not even what you want to do.
Right.
So it's like definitely not worth it.
Yeah.
What you said about the 8-hour workday, it made me, and how, it works for my company, so it works for everyone else. It's kind of like school. Like school is really structured to a certain type of learner. And if you are not that learner, then that's kind of it. Like, good luck. You're like, that sucks, basically, is like how it's structured.
Yes.
And it's like blanket statements. Like, I really try to stay, even though I don't, like, in my head, I try to stay away from blanket statements, and I'm sure I don't. But I don't know, like, I don't think really anything in life is a one size fits all type thing.
Definitely
I read a
not.
book all about that. Like, it was talking about how kids, when they're teenagers and in high school, it's like how their ideal schedule and like sleep schedule and all of that is like not in, what's the word I'm looking for, like in keeping with the way that schools are, where it's like they wake up, the school starts at 7 or 7:30. It's like teenagers, no wonder they're so tired, because they actually need a lot more sleep, and they get home from school and then they go to their sport or whatever they're doing after, they hang out with their friends and they do homework, and then they get to bed at they're not getting nearly enough sleep. It's like our whole society is based off of these like typical things, quote unquote, that work for certain people, but they actually do not work for everyone, because it's not possible. So it is unfortunate, but
very unfortunate. Yeah. Okay, last question. What do you think is the biggest way you have both individually changed or grown in the past year?
My stomach is 10 times the size it used to be.
Yeah, fair.
Just kidding. You can go first, Jade.
Oh gosh, that's a big one. I think just kind of the theme of what I've been talking about this whole time is just like letting go a little bit more and understanding that my life is going to work out in the best way for me, and to stop trying to control every little thing. I think every time I try and control more and more, it literally gets worse. I get more and more miserable. So my whole just theme this year, especially in the past few months, has just been like letting go of control, which is so insanely hard, especially with my personality, because I just like to control things. I like to have results, and when things aren't going my way, it just really bothers me, to be honest. It just annoys me. So I've just been trying so hard to be like, that's fine. Like, when something doesn't go my way, actually verbally being like, that's okay. That's really, like you said, like, rejection is redirection. Like, if something doesn't go my way, it's gonna make me stronger in the end. This is good for me. And just kind of like trying to also shed my like personality traits of like being a workaholic and stuff. I'm just like, that doesn't need to be my whole personality. Like, there's actually a lot of more things that are interesting about me that I should focus on. So just a constant journey for me, honestly. But I think I have really like come to grips with that recently and been a lot more actively like working on those things. So I think I've changed a lot since like January. Honestly, when I think about it, I'm like, ooh, I feel like I'm a lot more okay with like just things going wrong, and I just joke about them now. I'm like, awesome, okay, moving on.
More chill. Not that I've noticed.
Oh no.
No, I'm just kidding. I was gonna say, last year, like 2020, even though it was like just the absolute craziest year ever, I feel like is where my life kind of begun, like where I started to actually, I feel like all the work I had done on myself, because I was obsessed with self-help. I went to the Institute of Integrative Nutrition. I was very into like health. I still am into it, like health coaching, and I was getting into that. And I had read and watched and consumed so much self-help content, and it was making a difference. Like, I knew a lot of facts, but it wasn't like actually being applied. And last year, I feel like because we were forced to really take a deep look at ourselves and like what we were doing, and we were home all the time, is when I really started to actually bring awareness to a lot of things that I was doing that were like self-sabotaging habits, whether it be thought patterns, and like kind of having this realization that, like I said, my life can kind of be whatever I want, and my thoughts do not have to absolutely control me. And that I work with Jaci's dad. He's my life coach, and something he said, I can't remember exactly what I was talking about. Oh, I was talking about how I'm not good at confrontation. I was like, I hate confrontation. I'm just not good at it. I get so awkward. It's just basically, like I was saying, part of my DNA. Like, I'm just not good at it. And he asked me this question that I always think about. It's like, why are you protecting an identity that's not serving you? And I was like, oh, yeah, wow. I definitely am. Like, I am. Like, so much. Like, I would go to war for this identity that's, like, literally doing nothing good for me and only harming me. And so I started realizing a lot of those little things that I was doing. And so it was very freeing, because I started to understand that, again, I can, if I wanted to be a certain way, if I wanted to start being good at something as small as journaling in the morning, then I could work on it. And it's something simple. It doesn't have to be this huge, thing in my mind that I had to really work on, or whatever it is. Even being good at confrontation, where it's like, okay, what if that's just something you've learned, is that confrontation's awkward. You have this narrative in your mind that confrontation is bad. What if it's not bad? What if it's good? Because you can finally communicate and like say what you actually feel. And it's like, when you start to actually look at things a little bit differently, like change my perspective about a lot of things, I started to feel like life was fun again, and start to feel like I could relax and I could basically do anything. And I know in my mind, I was like, this is where fun life begins, because I know things will be hard in my life. I'm not naive to think that nothing bad will ever happen to me ever again, but I just have confidence in myself and in my own, like, I guess, regulation of my emotions, that I will be okay. And I always say, like, the worst case scenario to me, like, I'm a religious person, the worst case scenario, if something happens, if I really talk myself through, like, if I'm really anxious about something, like, okay, what's the worst case scenario? I die, I go to heaven, and I'm with Jesus. That's awesome. Yeah. That's actually not worst case scenario. That's great. Or, you know what I'm saying? It's like, when you really think about it, your fear is holding you back from so much. So if you're confident in yourself and you can kind of talk yourself through it, then all of a sudden life does become very exciting. And like, you have all of a sudden hope, which makes life fun.
More fun. Yeah. Worst case scenario is actually like, when you really get real with yourself and think about the worst case scenario of something you're scared of, it's actually makes you, usually for me, a lot more calm, because I'm like, it's really not that bad. Like, what? Okay, exactly. I lose like some money. It's like, yeah, I will get it back eventually. Yeah, like, it just in a business venture or something. Yes. I don't know. It's just like, nothing's really like the end of the world.
Yeah. And you can get through it. That's the other thing. Not that it'll be easy. Not that worst case scenario is always going to be the easiest option, but that you will be okay and you'll get through it no matter what.
Love that.
Wow, great advice, guys.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Where can they find you?
Thanks for having us. Well, our podcast is at What We Said Podcast on Instagram. You can listen to it anywhere you listen to podcasts. I'm sure you see it in a lot of TikToks. I feel like we're featured in the same TikToks a lot of the times.
Like when people say, here are my favorite podcasts.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of them are.
Yeah. Definitely. But my personal is at Chelsey Jade Curtis on TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram.
And my personal is at Jaci, Jaci Marie Smith.
Wow.
On also, everything.
Sorry, continue. Go.
No, I said on everything.
Oh,
that's it.
I was going to say, by the way, some of those TikToks have like millions of views. So shout out to the people who do those.
Yeah, thank you.
Of the podcast ones?
Yeah. And honestly, we should start paying people to do that.
No,
that's the best marketing.
Actually, that's not a bad
No, I
idea.
literally said that. I'm like, we should literally start paying like people as brand deals. If they're like huge fans of the podcast,
we can go in together.
Oh yeah, joint venture. I'm in, guys. Wow. Well, thank you.
Bye.